Om Gananam Tva Ganapatigam Mavamahe Kavim Kavinam Upavashravastramam Jyeshyam Brahmanan Brahmanaspada Anushrunnoti Visina Sadhanam Om Maha Ganadipataye Namaha. Prahlada Uvacha. This chapter 6th with the Prahlada Uvacha. Kaumaram acharet prajno dharman bhagavataniha durlabam manusham janma tadupyudya mavartamam. So, Prahlada is telling his friends, classmates, one who is sufficiently intelligent should use the human form of the body from the very beginning of the life. In other words, from the tender age of childhood to practice the activities of devotion service, giving up all other engagements. The human body is most rarely achieved. And although temporary like other bodies, it is meaningful because in human life, one can perform devotional service. Only in the human life, we can do the devotional service. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give you one complete perfection. The whole purpose of Vedic civilization and of reading the Vedas is to attain perfect stage of devotional service in the human form of life. Because the other form of life, like animal, donkey, king, donkey, and cow, and horse, and other life, they don't have an opportunity to do any devotional service. Only the human life has got a chance to make use of the human life for the devotional service. And we got the reasoning power of human being has got a reasoning power which animals don't. According to the Vedic system, therefore, from the very beginning of life, the brahmacharya system is introduced so that from one's very childhood, from the age of 5 years, one can practice modifying one's human activities so as to engage perfectly in devotional service under Narayana. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Swalapam apya asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Even a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Modern civilization, not referring to the verdicts of the Vedic literature, is so cruel to the members of the human society that instead of teaching children to become brahmacharis, it teaches mothers to kill their children even in the womb on the plea of curbing the increase of population. And if by chance the child is saved, he is educated only for sense gratification. Gradually, throughout the entire world, human society is losing interest in the perfection of life. Indeed, men are living like cats and dogs, spoiling the duration of their human lives by actually preparing to transmigrate again to the degraded species to born as an animal in future life. The Krishna consciousness movement is anxious to serve human society by teaching the people to perform devotion service, which can save the human being from being degraded. Hello? Hello? Who's speaking? Yeah, nice, thank you. I am in the middle of the online speech. Can you phone me back after 12 o'clock? Thank you. So, the human being, as a man or a woman, has got an opportunity with reasoning power and opportunity to do devotional activities. The Prahlada is telling the human life is very sacred, and we should use our human life to develop a devotional activities in prayer of Narayana. The human form of the life affords one chance to return home back to Godhead. Therefore, every living entity, especially in the human form of life, must engage in devotional service to the lotus feet of Lord Narayana. This devotion service is natural because Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Person of Godhead, is the most beloved, the master of soul, and the well-wisher of all other living beings. Prahlada continued, my dear friends, born of demonic families, the happiness perceived with reference to the sense objects by contact with the body can be obtained in any form of life according to one's past fruitive activities. Such happiness is automatically obtained without endeavor, just as we obtain distress. Endeavors merely for sense gratification or material happiness through economic development are not to be performed, for they result only in loss of time and energy with no actual profit. If one is endeavors are directed towards Narayana's consciousness and devotional activities of Vishnu, one can surely attain the spiritual platform of self-realization. There is no such benefit from engaging oneself in economic development. Therefore, while in material existence, a person fully competent to distinguish wrong from the right must endeavor to achieve the highest goal of life as long as the body is stout and strong and is not embarrassed by dwindling. Every human being has a maximum duration of life of 100 years, but for one who cannot control his senses, half of these years are completely lost because at night he sleeps 12 hours, being covered by ignorance. Therefore, such a person has a lifetime of only 50 years. In the tender age of childhood, when everyone is bewildered, one passes 10 years. Similarly, in boyhood, engaged in sporting and playing, one passes another 10 years. Then is this way, 25 years are wasted. Similarly, in old age, when one is an invalid, unable to perform even material activities, one passes another 20 years wastefully. One whose mind and senses are uncontrolled becomes increasingly attached to family life because of insatiable, lusty desires and very strong illusion in such a madman's life. The remaining years are also wasted because even during those years he cannot engage himself in devotion surveys. What person to attach to household life due to being unable to control his senses can liberate himself? An attached householder is bound very strongly by ropes of affection for his family, wife, children, and other relatives. So, materialistic attachment with wife, family, children, and house will not develop devotional service to the people. Money is so dear to them. Money is so dear that one conceives of money as being sweeter than honey. Therefore, who can give up the desire to accumulate money, especially in household life? Thieves, professional service servants, soldiers, and merchants try to acquire money even by risking their own very dear lives. So, materialistic life, people are attached to the family life, are keen to earn more money to look after the family. How can a person who is most affectionate to his family, the core of his heart being always filled with their pictures, give up their association? Specifically, a wife is always very kind and sympathetic and always pleases her husband in a solitary place. Who could give up the association of such a dear and affectionate wife? Small children talk in broken language, very pleasing to hear, and their affectionate father always thinks of their sweet words. How could he give up their association? One is elderly parents, and one is sons and daughters are also very dear. A daughter is especially dear to her father, and while living at her husband's house, she is always in his mind. Who could give up that association? Aside from this, in household affairs, there are many decorated items of household furniture, and there are also animals and servants. Who could give up such comforts? The attached householder is like a silkworm which waves a cocoon in which it becomes imprisoned, unable to get out, simply for the satisfaction of two important senses, the genitals and the tongue. One is bound by material conditions. How can we escape? How can one escape? Escaping from the materialistic life is not easy. That's what Prahlada is telling his children, his students, classmates. One who is too attached cannot understand that he is wasting his valuable life for the maintenance of his family. He also fails to understand that the purpose of the human life, a life suitable for realization of the absolute truth, is being imperceptibly spoiled. However, he is very cleverly attentive to seeing that not a single farthing is lost by mismanagement. Thus, although an attached person in material existence always suffers from threefold miseries, he does not develop a distaste for the way of material existence. So, in other words, a foolish man does not understand the value of human life, nor does he understand how he is wasting his valuable life simply for the maintenance of his family members. He is expert in calculating the loss of pounds, shillings, and pence, but he is so foolish that he does not know how much money he is losing, even according to material considerations. Chanakya Pandita gives an example that a moment of life cannot be purchased in exchange for millions of dollars. A foolish person, however, wastes such a valuable life without knowing how much he is losing, even according to monetary calculations. Although a materialistic person is expert in calculating cost and doing business, he does not realize that he is misusing the costly life for want of knowledge. Even though such a materialistic person is always suffering threefold miseries. Hello? Yeah. Uh-huh. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, bye. If a person too attached to the duties of family maintenance is unable to control his senses, the core of his heart is immersed in how to accumulate more money, although he knows that one who takes the wealth of others will be punished by the law of the government and by the laws of Yamaraja after the death. He continues cheating others to acquire money, which is not good for himself or his family. Especially in these days, people do not believe in the next life or in the court of Yamaraja and the various punishments of the sinful life. But at least one should know that one who cheats others to acquire money will be punished by the laws of government also and laws of Yamaraja also. Nonetheless, people do not care about the laws of this life or those governing the next life. Despite whatever knowledge one has, one cannot stop his sinful activities if he is unable to control his senses. Oh, my friends, Prahlada is telling to sons of demons, in this materialistic world, even those who are apparently advanced in education have the propensity to consider, this is mine and that is for others. Thus, they are always engaged in providing the necessities of life to their families in a limited conception of life, just like uneducated cats and dogs. They are unable to take the spiritual knowledge. Instead, they are bewildered and overcome by ignorance. My dear friends, O sons of the demons, it is certain that no one bereft of knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has been able to liberate himself from material bondage at any time or in any country. Rather, those bereft of knowledge of the Lord are bound by the material laws. They are factually addicted to the sense of gratification, and their target is woman. Indeed, they are actually playthings in the hands of attractive women. Victimized by such a conception of life, they become surrounded by children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Thus, they are shackled to material bondage. Those who are very much addicted to this conception of life are called asuras. Therefore, although you are sons of demons, keep aloof from such persons and take a shelter of the Supreme Person of Godhead Narayana, the origin of all the gods, because the ultimate goal for the devotees of Narayana is liberation from the bondage of material existence. Prahlada maintained the philosophical point of view that one should give up the dark well of family life and go to the forest to take shelter of the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana. In this verse also, he stresses the same point. In the history of human society, no one at any time or any place has been liberated because of too much affection and attachment for his family. Even in those who are apparently very educated, the same family attachment is there. They cannot give up the association of their families, even in old age or invalidity, for they are attached to sense enjoyment. As we have several times discussed, the problems of the householders are simply attracted by sexual enjoyment and family life. Thus, they keep themselves shackled in family life. Furthermore, they want their children to be shackled in the same way, playing the parts of playboys in the hands of a woman. They glide down to the darkest regions of the material existence. Because they are unable to control their senses, they continued a life of chewing the chewed and therefore descend to the darkest material regions. One should give up the association of such demons and adhere to the association of devotees. That is called satsanga. Thus, one will be able to be liberated from material bondage. My dear sons of Daityas, the Supreme Person of Godhead Narayana is the original super soul, the father of all living entities in the whole entire universe. Consequently, there are no impediments to pleasing him or worshipping him under any conditions. Whether one be a child or an old man, the relationship between the living entities and the Supreme Person of Godhead is always a fact. And therefore, there is no difficulty in pleasing the Lord Narayana. The Supreme Person of Godhead Narayana, the Supreme Controller, who is infallible and indefeatable, is present in different forms of life, from the inert living beings, Stavara, such as plants, to Brahma, the foremost created living being. He is also present in the varieties of material creations and in the material elements, the total material energy and the modes of material nature, Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna, as well as the unmanifested material nature and the false ego. Although he is one, he is present everywhere. And he is also the transcendental supersoul, the cause of all causes, who is present as the observer in the course of the hearts of all living entities. He is indicated as that which is pervaded and as the all-pervading supersoul, but actually he cannot be indicated. He is changeless and undivided. He is simply perceived as the supreme Satchit Ananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Being covered by curtain of the external energy, to the atheist, he appears non-existent. So for the atheist, Narayana is not existing. Only devotees is existing. Therefore, my dear young friends, born of Daityas, please act in such a way that the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the conception of material knowledge, will be satisfied. Give up your demonic nature and act without enmity or duality. Show mercy to all living entities by enlightening them in devotion service, thus becoming their well-wishers. So the Prahlada is asking all the boys in his ashrama who are sons of Daityas to follow Narayana's teaching. Nothing is unobtainable for devotees who have satisfied the Supreme Person of Godhead, who is the cause of all causes, the original source of everything. The Lord is the reservoir of unlimited spiritual qualities. For devotees, therefore, who are transcendental to the modes of material nature, what is the use of following the principles of religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, which are all automatically obtainable under the influence of modes of nature? We devotees always glorify the lotus feet of the Lord, and therefore We need not ask for anything in terms of dharma, kama, artha, moksha. Religion, economic development, and sense gratification, these are described in the Vedas as trivarga, or three ways to salvation. Within these three categories are education and self-realization, ritualistic ceremonies performed according to Vedic injunctions, logic, the science of law and order, and the various means of earning one's livelihood. These are the external subject matters of study in the Vedas, and therefore I consider them materialistic. However, I consider surrender to lotus feet of Lord Vishnu to be transcendental. These instructions of Prahlada stress the transcendental position of devotion service to his classmates. Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the well-wisher and friend of all living entities, formerly explained this transcendental knowledge to the great saint Narada. Such knowledge is extremely difficult to understand without the mercy of a saintly person like Narada. But everyone who has taken shelter of Narada's disciplic succession can understand this confidential knowledge. Prahlada continued, I received this knowledge from the great saint Narada Muni, who is always engaged in devotional service to Narayana. The knowledge which is called Bhagavata Dharma is fully scientific. It is based on the logic and philosophy and is free from all material contamination. The sons of the Daityas replied, Dear Prahlada, neither you nor we know any teacher or a spiritual master other than Chanda and Amarka, the sons of Shukracharyaji. After all, we are children and they are our controllers. For you especially, who always remain within the palace, it is very difficult to associate with a great personality. Dear friend, most gentle one, would you kindly explain how it is possible for you to hear Narada? Kindly dispel our doubts in this regard. So, his classmates are very curious to know how he got the lesson from Narada. So we are going to chapter 7. In this chapter, to dissipate the doubts of his classmates, the friends of demons, Prahlada states how within the womb of his mother he had heard from the mouth of Narada Muni, who had instructed him in Bhagavata Dharma. When Hiranyakashipu left his kingdom and went to the mountain known as Mandarachala to execute severe austerities, all the demons scattered. Hiranyakashipu's wife Kayadu was pregnant at the time, and the demigods, mistakenly thinking that she carried another demon in her womb, arrested her. Their plan was that as soon as the child took birth, they would like to kill him. While they were taking Kayadu to the heavenly planets, they met Narada Muni, who stopped him from taking her away and took her to his ashrama until Hiranyakashipu's return. In Narada Muni's ashrama, Kayadu, the mother of Prahlada, prayed for the protection of the baby in her womb, and Narada Muni reassured her and gave her instructions on spiritual knowledge. Taking the advantage of these instructions, Prahlada, although a small baby within the womb of the mother, listened very carefully. The spirit soul is always apart from the material body. There is no change in the spiritual form of the living entity. Any person above the bodily conception of life is pure. Any person above the bodily conception of life is pure and can receive transcendental knowledge. This transcendental knowledge is devotional service, and Prahlada Maharaja, while living in the womb of his mother, received instructions in devotional service from Narada Muni. Any person engaged in the service of the Lord through the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master is immediately liberated. And being free from the clutches of the Maya, he is relieved from all ignorance and material desires. The duty of everyone is to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Lord Narayana and thus become free from all material desires. Regardless of the material condition in which one is situated, one can achieve this perfection. Devotional service is not dependent on the material activities of austerity, penance, mystic Maha Yoga, piety, even when without much assets, One can achieve devotion service through the mercy of pure devotee, can do that. So Narada Muni said to Prahlada, although Prahlada Maharaj was born in a family of asuras, he was the greatest asset, greatest of all devotees. Having thus been qualified, questioned by his classmates, the sons of asuras, he remembered the words spoken to him by me and replied to his friends as follows. Prahlada said, when our father Hiranyakashipu went to Mandarachala mountain to execute severe austerities, in his absence, the gods headed by Indra made a severe attempt to subdue all the demons in warfare. Alas, as a serpent is eaten by small ants, so the troublesome Hiranyakashipu, who always inflicted miseries upon all types of people, has now been defeated by the reactions of his own sinful activities. Saying this, the gods headed by King Indra arranged to fight the demons. When the great leaders of the demons who were being killed one after the other saw the unprecedented exertion of the gods in fighting, they began to flee, scattering themselves in all directions, simply to protect their lives. They hastily fled from their homes, wives, children, animals, and household paraphernalia. Paying no heed to all these, the demons simply fled. The victorious gods plundered the palace of Hiranyakashipu, the king of demons. They destroyed everything within it. The Indra, king of heavens, arrested Kaya, the wife of Hiranyakashipu, the queen of the palace. As she was being led away, crying in fear like a captured by a vulture, the great sage Narada, who at that time had no engagement, appeared on the scene and saw her in that condition. Narada Muni asked Indra, O Indra, king of the gods, this woman is certainly sinless. You should not drag her off in this merciless way. O greatly fortunate one, this chaste woman is the wife of another. You must immediately release her. So Indra says, King Indra said, in the womb of this woman, the wife of the demon Hiranyakashipu is the seed of that great demon. Therefore, let her remain in our custody until her child is delivered, and then we shall release her. Narada Muni replied, the child within this woman's womb is a faultless and sinless. Indeed, he is a great devotee of Narayana, a powerful servant of the Supreme Personality of God and Narayana. Therefore, you will not be able to kill him. When the great saint Narada Muni had thus spoken, King Indra, being respectful to Narada's words, immediately released Kayadu, wife of Hiranyakashipu. Because of my being a devotee of the Lord, all the gods circumambulated her. Then they returned to their celestial kingdom. So King Indra left Kayadu in the hands of Narada Muni. Prahlada Maharaj continued, the great saint Narada Muni brought my mother to his ashrama and assured her of all protection, saying, my dear child, please remain at my ashram until the arrival of your husband. After accepting the instructions of Devarshi Narada, my mother stayed in his care without fear from any direction, as long as my father, the king of Daityas, had not become free from his severe austerities. My mother, being pregnant, desired the safety of her embryo and desired to give birth after her husband's arrival. Thus she stayed at Narada Muni's ashrama, where she rendered service unto the Narada Muni with great devotion. Narada Muni delivered his instructions both to me, who has within the womb, and my mother, who has engaged in rendering him service. Because he is naturally extremely kind to the fallen souls, being in a transcendental position, he gave instructions on the religion and transcendental knowledge. These instructions were free from all material contamination. Because of the long duration of time that has passed, and because of her being a woman and therefore less intelligent, my mother has forgotten all those instructions. But the great sage Narada blessed me, and therefore I could not forget them. So Prahlada didn't forget what Narada Muni has taught him. Prahlada Maharaj continued, my dear friends, if you can place your faith in my words, simply by that faith you can also understand transcendental knowledge. Just like me, although you are small children, similarly a woman can also understand transcendental knowledge and know what is the spirit and what is the matter. These words of Prahlada are very important in regard to the knowledge descending from the disciplinic action. Just as the fruits and flowers of a tree in due course of time undergo 6 changes: birth, existence, growth, transformation, dwindling, and then death. The material body, which is obtained by spirit soul under different circumstances, undergoes similar changes. However, there are no such changes for the spirit soul. This is what Prahlada said to his friends. Atma refers to the Supreme Lord or living entities. Both of them are spiritual, free from birth and death. Atma refers to the Supreme Lord or the living entities. Both of them are spiritual, free from birth and death, free from deterioration and free from material contamination. They are individual, they are the knowers of the external body, and they are the foundation or shelter of everything. They are free from material change, they are self-illuminated. They are the cause of all causes, and they are all pervading. They have nothing to do with the material body. Therefore, they are always uncovered. With these transcendental qualities, one who is actually learned must give up the illusory conception of life, in which one thinks, I am this material body, and everything in relation to this body is mine. An expert geologist can understand where there is a gold and by various processes can extract it from the gold ore. Similarly, a spiritual advanced person can understand how the spiritual particle exists in the body, and thus by cultivating spiritual knowledge, he can attain perfection in spiritual life. However, as one who is not expert cannot understand where there is a gold, a foolish person who has not cultivated spiritual knowledge cannot understand how the spirit exists within the body. The Lord's 8 separated material energies, the 3 modes of material nature, and 16 transformations, the 11 senses, and the 5 gross material elements like earth and water. Within all these, the one spiritual soul exists as the observer. Therefore, all the great acharyas have concluded that the individual soul is conditioned by these materialistic elements. As explained in previous verse, Kshetresu Tehasu Tatatma Yogir Adhyatma with Brahma Gatim Labhet. A spiritually advanced person can understand how the spiritual particle exists within the body, and thus by cultivating spiritual knowledge, he can attain perfection in spiritual life. The intelligent person who is expert in finding the self within the body must understand the 8 external energies which are listed in the Bhagavad Gita. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 comprises material energies. Bhumi, the earth, includes all the objects of sense perception. Rupa, the form, rasa, the taste, gandha, the smell, shabda, sound, and sparsha, touch. Within the earth are the fragrance, roses, the taste of sweet fruit, and whoever else we want. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Sarvakama Dugdha Mahi. The earth is Mahi, contains all our requirements. Thus, the objects of sense perception are all present in Bhumi, on the earth. The gross material elements and subtle material elements, mind, intelligence, and ahankara, false ego, constitutes the total material energy. Within the total material energy are the 3 material modes or qualities. These qualities are Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna. belong not to the soul but to the material energy. It is because of the interaction of these three material nodes of nature that the five knowledge gathering senses, the five working senses, Karmendriya, Jnanendriya, their control of the mind are manifested. Then, according to these modes, the living entity gets the opportunity to perform different types of karma with the different types of knowledge, thinking, feeling, and willing. Thus, the bodily machine begins to work. This has all been properly analyzed in Sankhya Yoga by the great Acharya, especially Supreme Person of Godhead Krishna in his incarnation as Devahuti Putra Kapila. This is indicated here by the word Acharya, Kapila Acharya. We need not follow anyone who is not an authorized Acharya. Acharyavan Purusho Vedaha. One can understand the truth fully when he was taken shelter of an expert Acharya. There are two kinds of bodies for every individual soul: a gross body made of five gross elements, and subtle body made of three subtle elements. Within these bodies, however, is the spirit soul. One must find the soul by analysis, saying, this is not it, this is not it. Thus, one must separate spirit from the shelter, from the matter. Sober and expert persons should search for the spirit soul with minds purified through the analytical study in terms of the soul's connection with and distinction from all things that undergo creation, maintenance, and destruction. Intelligence can be perceived in three states of activity: wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. The person who perceives these three is to be considered the original master, the ruler, and supreme person of Godhead. Without intelligence, one cannot understand the direct activities of the senses, nor can he understand dreaming or the cessation of all gross and subtle activities. The seer and controller is the supreme person of Godhead, the supreme soul, by whose direction the individual soul can understand when he is awake, when he is sleeping, and when he is completely in trance. As one can understand the presence of the air by the aromas it carries, so under the guidance of Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can understand the living soul by these three divisions of intelligence. These three divisions, however, are not the soul. They are constituted of the three modes and are born activities. Through polluted intelligence, one is subjected to the modes of nature, and thus one is conditioned by material existence like a dreaming state in which one falsely suffers from material existence, which is due to ignorance, must be considered unwanted and temporary. These are the shlokas of Bhagavata Purana. We are reading the 28th shloka. I'm telling the meaning of 28th shloka. Therefore, my dear friends, O sons of the Daityas, your duty is to take Narayana's worship, which can burn the seed of fruitive activities artificially created by the modes of material nature, and stop the flow of the intelligence in wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. In other words, when one takes the Narayana's consciousness, his ignorance is immediately dissipated. Of the different processes recommended for disentanglement from material life, the one personally explained and accepted by the Supreme Person of Godhead should be considered all perfect. That process is the performance of duties by which love for the Supreme Lord develops. One must accept the bona fide spiritual master and render service unto him with a great devotion and faith. Whatever one has in one's possession should be offered to the spiritual master, and in the association of saintly persons and devotees, one should worship the Lord, hear the glories of the Lord, and faith glories glorify the transcendental qualities and activities of the Lord, always meditate on the Lord's lotus feet, and worship the deity of the Lord strictly according to the injunctions of the Shastra and the Guru. One should always remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his localized representation as the Paramatma, that is Narayana, who is situated in the core of every living entity's heart. Thus, one should offer respect to every living entity according to that living entity's position and manifestation. Hari Sarvosha Bhuteshu. Hari Sarveshu Bhuteshu. This statement is sometimes misunderstood by unscrupulous persons who wrongly conclude that because Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is situated in every living entity is therefore Hari. Such foolish persons do not distinguish between Atma and Paramatma, who are situated in every body. Atma is the living entity and the Paramatma is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. The individual living entity, however, is different from the Paramatma, the Supreme Lord. Therefore, Hari Sarveshu Bhuteshu means that Hari is situated as Paramatma, not as Atma. Although Atma is a part of Paramatma, offering respect to every living entity means offering respect to the Paramatma situated in every living entity. One should not misunderstand every living entity to be the Paramatma. Sometimes unscrupulous persons designate a living entity as Daridra Narayana or Swami Narayana. Thus, Narayana or that Narayana. One should clearly understand that although Narayana is situated in the core of heart of every living entity, the living entity never becomes Narayana himself. By these activities mentioned above, one is able to cut down the influence of the enemies, namely the lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and jealousy. And when this thus situated, one can render service to the Lord Narayana. In this way, one surely attains the platform of loving service of Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana. One who is situated in devotion service is certainly the controller of his senses, and that's he is liberated person. When such a liberated person, the pure devotee, hears of the transcendental qualities of and activities of the Lord's incarnations for the performance of various pastimes, his hair stands on end on his body, tears fell from his eyes, and in his spiritual realization, his voice falters. Sometimes he very openly dances. Sometimes he sings loudly, and sometimes he cries. Thus, he expresses his transcendental jubilation. When a devotee becomes like a person haunted by a ghost, he laughs and very loudly chants about the qualities of the Lord. Sometimes he sits to perform meditation and he offers respect to everything living entity, considering him a devotee of the Lord, constantly breathing very heavily. He becomes careless of social etiquette and loudly chants like a madman. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. When one chants the holy name of the Lord, he is in ecstasy, not caring for outward social conventions. It is to be understood that he is Atmamati. In other words, the consciousness is turned toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotee is then freed from all material contamination because of constantly think of the Lord's pastime, and because of his mind and body have been converted to spiritual qualities because of his intense devotional service. His ignorance, material consciousness, and all kinds of material desires are completely burnt to ashes. This is the stage at which one can achieve the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. It's very important to understand The devotee is then freed from all material contamination because he constantly thinks of the Lord's Narayana's pastimes, and because of his mind and body have been converted to spiritual qualities. Because of his intense devotion service, his ignorance, material consciousness, and all kinds of material desires are completely burnt to ashes. This is the stage at which one can achieve the shelter of lotus feet of Lord Narayana. The real problem of life is the repetition of birth and death. The people will die and born again, die and born again, which is like a wheel of rolling repeatedly up and down. This wheel, however, birth and death cycle as a wheel, however, completely stops when one is in touch with the Supreme Person of Godhead. In other words, by the transcendental bliss realized from constant engagement in devotion service, one is completely liberated from material existence. All learned men know this. Therefore, my dear friends, O sons of Asuras, immediately begin meditating upon and worshipping the super soul, super soul, super soul Narayana within everyone's heart. O my friends, sons of Asuras, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, in his super soul feature, always exists within the course of hearts of all living entities. Indeed, he is the well-wisher and friend of all living entities. And there is no difficulty in worshipping the Lord. Why then should people not engage in his devotion service? Why are they so addicted to unnecessary producing artificial paraphernalia for sense gratification? One's richest beautiful wife and female friends, one is sons and daughters, one's residence, one's domestic animals like cows, elephants, and horses, one's treasury, economic development, and sense gratification. Indeed, even the lifetime in which one can enjoy all these material opulences are certainly temporary and flickering. Since the opportunity of human life is temporary, what benefit can these material opulences give to a sensible man who has underwent himself to be eternal? I think it's very difficult if you don't carefully listen to understand. Any people can be rich and any people can have a female friends, one is sons, daughters, one's residence, domestic animals like cows, elephants, horses, one is treasury, economic development, sense gratification. Indeed, even in the lifetime in which one can enjoy all these material opulences are certainly temporary and flickering. Since the opportunity of human life is temporary, what benefit can these material opulences give to a sensible man who has understood himself to be eternal? So, what Prahlada is telling, the material benefits of the life and luxury, they're all temporary and they're not permanent. So, the devotion to Narayana is permanent and attain mukti and release from the cycle of birth and death. It is learned from the Vedic literature that by performing great sacrifices, one may elevate himself to the heavenly planets. However, although life on the heavenly planet is hundreds and thousands of times more comfortable than life on the earth, the heavenly planets are not pure, nirmalam, are free from the taint of material existence. The heavenly planets are also temporary and therefore they are not in the goal of life. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, has never been seen or heard to possess inebriety. Consequently, for your own benefit and self-realization, you must worship the Lord with a great devotion, as described in the revealed scripture. A materialistic person thinking himself very advanced in intelligence continually acts for economic development. But again and again, as enunciated in the Vedas, he is frustrated by material activities, either in this life or in the next. Indeed, the results of one obtains are inevitably the opposite of those one desires. No one has ever achieved the results of desired from material activities. On the contrary, everyone has been frustrated again and again. Therefore, one must not waste his time in such material activities for sensual pleasure, either in this life or in the next. So many nationalists, economists, and other ambitious persons have tried for more happiness individually or constantly. But history proves that they have all been frustrated. In recent history, we have seen many political leaders work hard for individual and collective economic development, but they have all failed. This is the law of nature, as they clearly explained in the next verse. In this material world, in this material world, every materialistic desires to achieve happiness and diminishes distress, and therefore he acts accordingly. Actually, however, one is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, his conditions of distress begin. A living entity desires comfort for his body and makes many plans for this purpose. But actually, the body is the property of others. Indeed, the perishable body embraces the living entity and then leaves him aside. But actually, the body is the property of others. Indeed, the perishable body embraces the living entity and then leaves him aside. Everyone desires comfort for his body and tries to make suitable situation for this purpose, forgetting that the body is meant to be eaten by dogs, jackals, or moths, and thus turned into useless stool, ashes, and earth. The living entity wastes his time in a futile attempt to gain material possessions for the comfort of one body and another. Since the body itself is ultimately meant to become stool or earth, what is the meaning of the paraphernalia related to the body, such as wives, residences, wealth, children, relatives, servants, friends, and kingdoms, treasuries, and animals and ministers? They are also temporary. What more can be said about them? They're all temporary. The whole materialistic life is temporary. All this paraphernalia is very near and dear as long as the body exists. But as soon as the body is destroyed, all things related to the body are also finished. Therefore, actually one has nothing to do with them. But because of ignorance, one accepts them as valuable. Compared to the ocean of eternal happiness, they are most insignificant. What is the use of such insignificant relationships from the eternal living being? My dear friends, Prahlada continued to tell his classmates, O sons of Asuras, the living entity receives different types of bodies according to his previous fruitive activities. Thus, he is seen to suffer with reference to his particular body in all conditions of life. Beginning with his infusion into the womb, please tell me, therefore, after full consideration, what is the living entity's actual interest in fruitive activities which result in hardship and misery? The living entity who has received his present body because of his past fruitive activity may end the results of his actions in this life. But this does not mean that he is liberated from the bondage to the material bodies. The living entity receives one type of body, and by performing the actions within that body, he creates another. Thus, he transmigrates from the body to another through repeated birth and death because of his great ignorance. The four principles of advancement in spiritual life is dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. All depend on the disposition of the Supreme Person of Godhead. Therefore, my dear friends, follow in the footsteps of devotees. Without desire, fully depend upon the disposition of the Supreme Lord, worship Him. the super soul in devotional service. So Prahlada is continuously asking them to do Narayana's devotional service to his friends. Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari is the soul and the super soul of all living entities. Every living entity is a manifestation of his energy in terms of the living soul and the material body. Therefore, the Lord is the most dear and he is the supreme controller. If a god or a demon, human being, yaksha, gandharva, or anyone within the universe renders service to the lotus feet of Narayana, who can deliver liberation, he is actually situated in the most auspicious condition of life, exactly like us, the Mahajanas headed by Prahlada. Prahlada, by his living example, requested his classmates and friends to engage in devotion service of Narayana, whether in the God society, Asura society, human society, or Gandharva society. Every living entity should take shelter of lotus feet of Narayana and thus becomes perfect in good fortune. My dear friends, O sons of Asuras, you cannot please the Supreme Personality of Godhead by becoming perfect Brahmanas, gods, or great saints, or by becoming perfectly good in etiquette or vast learning. None of these qualifications can awaken the pleasure of the Lord, nor by charity, austerity, sacrifice, cleanliness, or vows can one satisfy the Lord. The Lord is pleased only if one is unflinching, unalloyed devotion to him. Without sincere devotion service, everything is simply a show. So Prahlada asked his classmates that important thing is start devotional service to Lord Narayana. My dear friends, both signs of the Asuras, in the same favorable way that one sees himself, that takes care of himself, take to devotional service to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is present everywhere as the super soul of all the living entities. O my friends, sons of Asuras, everyone including you, the Yakshas and Rakshasas, the unintelligent women, Shudras and cowherd men and birds, the lower animals and the sinful living entities, can revive his original eternal spiritual life and exist forever simply by accepting the principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this materialistic world, to render the service to the lotus feet of Narayana, the cause of all causes, and to see him everywhere is the only goal of life. This much alone is the ultimate goal of human life, as explained by all the revealed scriptures. A devotee sees everyone and everything in relation with Narayana. Everything is an expansion of Narayana's energy. Just as those who are greedy see everything as a source of money making and death, those who are lusty see everything as being conceived to sex, conducive. The most perfect devotee, Prahlada, saw Narayana even within a stone column. This does not mean, however, that we must accept the stone column as the words of Daridra Narayana, which have been manufactured by some unscrupulous persons. One who actually envisions Narayana everywhere makes no distinction between the poor and the rich. To single out the Narayana devotional activities is the important thing that everyone should follow. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of 7th Canto, 7th chapter of Srimad Maha Bhagavata Purana, entitled What Prahlada Learned in the Womb of His Mother. In the next chapter, the 8th chapter, Lord Narasimha Deva slays the king of demons, Hiranyakashipu. As described in this chapter, Hiranyakashipu was ready to kill his own son Prahlada Maharaja. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared in front of the demon as Sri Narasimha, half lion and half man, and killed him. Following the instructions of Prahlada Maharaja, all the sons of the demons became attached to Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When this attachment became pronounced, their teachers Skanda, Chanda, and Amarka were very much afraid that the boys would become more and more devoted to Lord Narayana. In a helpless condition, they approached Hiranyakashipu and described in detail the effect of Prahlada's preaching. After hearing of this, Hiranyakashipu decided to kill his own son Prahlada. Hiranyakashipu was so angry and that Prahlada fell down at his feet. He said many things just to pacify him, but he was unsuccessful in satisfying his demonic father. Hiranyakashipu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Prahlad Maharaj challenged him, saying that Hiranyakashipu, who was not God, and began glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, declaring that the Lord is still all-pervading, that everything is under him, and no one is equal to or greater than him. Thus he requested his father to be submissive to the omnipotent Lord Narayana. The more Prahlada is glorified as Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana, the more angry and agitated the demon became. Hiranyakashipu asked his Vaishnava son whether his God existed within the column of this palace. Prahlada Maharaja immediately accepted that since the Lord is present everywhere, he was also present within the columns. When Hiranyakashipu heard this philosophy from his young son, he derided the boy's statement as just the talk of a child, forcefully struck of the pillar with his fist. He decided the boy's statement as just talk of a child and forcefully struck the pillar with his fist. As soon as the Hiranyakashipu struck the column, there issued a tumultuous sound. At first, Hiranyakashipu, the king of demons, could not see anything but the pillar. But to substantiate Prahlada's statement, the Lord came out of the pillar in his wonderful incarnation as Narasimha, half lion and half man. Hiranyakashipu could immediately understand that the extraordinary wonderful form of the Lord was surely meant for his death, and thus he prepared to fight within the form of half lion and half man. The Lord performed his pastimes by fighting with the demon for some time, and in the evening, on the border between the day and the night, the Lord captured the demon, threw him on his lap, and killed him by piercing his abdomen through his nails. The Lord not only killed Hiranyakashipu, the king of demons, but also killed many of his followers. When there was no one else fight, the Lord, roaring with anger, sat down the Hiranyakashipu's throne. The entire universe thus relieved the rule of Hiranyakashipu, and everyone was jubilant in transcendental bliss. Then all the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, approached the Lord. These included the great saintly persons, the Pitrus, the Siddhas, and Vidyadharas, the Nagas, the Manus, the Prajapatis, the Gandharvas, and Charanas, the Yakshas, the Kimpurushas, the Vaitalikas, and Kinnaras, and also many other varieties of beings in human form. All of them stood not far from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and began offering the prayers unto the Lord, whose spiritual effulgency was brilliant as he sat on the throne. So Narasimha did Hiranyakashipu Vadana. After the killing Hiranyakashipu, the Lord Narasimha, whose spiritual effulgence was brilliant like a sun, he sat on the throne. That's the end of the chapter of Narasimha Devara Prabhava. 8th chapter. I'm going to read the same story what I have told you now in the forum. Again, further explanation tomorrow. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you. नमोस्तु अनंताय सहस्रमूर्तये सहस्रपादाक्षिरूपाव सहस्रनाम्ने पुरुषाश्रये सहस्रकोटियुगधारिणे नमः। आकाशात् पतितं यदागच्छ सागरं सर्वदेव नमस्कारः। श्रीकेशवं परिगत्यो नमः। सर्ववेदेषु यत्पुण्यं सर्वतीर्थेषु यत्फलं तत्फलं पुण्यमाप्ति वासनात् वासुदेवस्य वासन्ते यत्र सर्वभूतने वासुदेव नमस्ते कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि।